This is Automotive Advertising with your host, Jim Flint.
And welcome to the Automotive Advertising Podcast with Jim Flint. I'm happy to continue season 2 with Chris Wohrer.
Hey.
We're talking about creativity. We're talking about the 7 C's of creativity.
Okay.
And this is our second session. We're going to talk today about not creative concepts, but creative conception. How to open up the mind and bring ideas to a visual medium, bring ideas to paper, bring ideas to scripts. I've kind of looked through and tried to develop a process where we gather the information that we need, where we breathe in or meditate on what it is that we are trying to achieve, then step away, come back, and then achieve. Now that's how we approach things. I'm curious, in terms of those 3 or 4 or 5 steps that I just mentioned, is there one piece of that puzzle that you feel like is a key to success, or do you have a different process in terms of how you bring creative to clients or to consumers?
I think it's really, really similar. Our first step is to roll around an idea or concept or goal and stretch it as many ways as we can. Just brainstorm and vomit every connection that comes to our head. Don't censor yourself at all.
You made me think of silly putty, like stretching it. Just
move it around. Any kind of stupid connection. Don't censor yourself. Don't tell yourself no ever in that phase. And I think that's kind of similar to what you've explained. And then we step away from it and we let things, marinate and then come back.
Simmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your brain's got a way of solving a problem for you if you just let it work.
Right.
So, but it's important to feed it all that input before you let it work.
Right.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't simmer down, you can't get there.
No, you
it's
can't.
Amazing.
It's got to cook.
And I say this because we work with a lot of Type A personalities, and I think when I'm not in my creative, and are you Type A? Would you say, or no?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
You don't think about it.
I don't
right?
know. So maybe I'm not just because I answer like that.
Well, I move back and forth from Type A of where I want to get things achieved, but then I want to also make sure that I give the creative space the room it needs to breathe and succeed.
It does need it.
Yes, and I think as you look at it, so let's say you go through this process, and now you've got an idea that you're taking to the client or to the consumer, and they're like, they want to reshape it. That's a nice way of saying it, right? They want to take what you've stewed on and brewed on and thought about and simmered, and now the meal is ready. You're the chef, and they say, well, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think that's going to work.
Well, I think that's where all the great stuff happens.
Okay.
Because if you have no boundary for your idea, what are you going to make? I mean, you could make anything. So it doesn't really inspire a lot because there's no necessity. When you come with an idea or some concepts to a client and they start putting boxes around you and saying, you got to include this, you got to have this, you got to trap this. Now you have to figure out a way to make your ideas work within those parameters. And all kinds of interesting stuff starts to happen when you have just a few lines drawn that kind of box you in. Because you can't be outside the box if there's not a box.
Yeah.
You got to have it there. So
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, for sure. I find too, like if you get too many chefs in the kitchen, right, it can mix things up and make things difficult. Do you find yourself competing with the client versus consumer connection of advertising and marketing in the creative process?
Well, I feel like sometimes the clients are in their own way.
No doubt.
Yeah, that's going to happen. But your job is to help them get out of their way and to convince them that what you're saying and what they're wanting are the same things. And if you don't believe they are, or if they're not really, then you don't need to be having that conversation with them. You want to take their best interests and their goals and help them reach that, whether that's what they want to hear or not. And from them, if they're making good decisions, then hopefully they're going to trust you. If you're, bringing the goods.
You know what I find in the creative process, a lot of times people market to themselves. And so creatively, you're really not marketing to yourself. And I remember when I was working at Nike, right, we had a it was one of my first days on the job. I was doing an internship, and I was 25 years old. I knew everything, right? And I was really smart, and I would help you. I mean, we all are, right? We all are very smart. Were you brilliant?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was genius.
Yeah,
and you kind of are. You're kind of better than you're ever gonna be.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know,
Like just like these people that are day trading in the stock market, right?
Oh yeah,
it only goes up. Like
That's
Davey
dumb.
Day Trader, if you've seen him, if you haven't checked him out, definitely check out his podcast and Twitter feed. But as you look at that, I remember the experience with Nike. She said, "Hey, here's the thing, hotshot. This is my boss. She's in Northwestern MBA, not NBA. She was tall. She probably could have played in the NBA, but MBA, very brilliant. Lori Morrow, if she's listening." And she said, "Hey, we market to 8 to 13-year-olds. Well, what do you mean? Like, that's our target audience." And so she showed me this creative slick of an eyeball sitting on top of a fork. And it was a basketball ad. And she asked me if I got it. I said, I looked at it for a few minutes. I didn't get it, right? And I said to her, "Well, I'm not an 8 to 13-year-old," because I was 25 and I was really smart. That was the wrong thing to say. She goes, "Kids that age get it. An eyeball on the fork is for a player because you can spin the fork and the court vision." And once you saw it, you saw it. And she said, "Oh, and by the way, when you buy something at that window, that age group, you buy it for the rest of your life. You become indoctrinated. You become a forever customer. Whereas if you are older in the acquisition, you're not going to stay." And so whenever you look at Nike advertising, it holds true today. They continue to be creative with their shoe designs, with even the reintroductions of the Jordan brand. And I'm
a Jordan brander for life.
Yeah,
so,
me too.
Yeah,
right.
they got me at 8 to 13, so I'm in.
But they continually, I mean, they're on shoe 34, 35. A new player, rookie Zion Williamson from the New Orleans Pelicans, is representing the Jordan brand. And as they reinvent the shoes, Travis Scott, the Houston native, he's got his own brand. I mean, they're starting to capture all these different relationships that are happening in the fashion industry, but making the products uniquely their own. And I will tell you, when I look for inspiration sometimes, I love looking at cars, but I also look at shoes because they're much more dynamic and much more experimental.
Oh, extremely. And I mean, they're always pushing the envelope. So you're looking a little bit at the future every time you see it, you know, and maybe it's not there yet for you, but in a couple of years, that style might be perfect what you're looking for, you know.
And they do a great job too. Just for listeners out there, there is an app called Sneakers.
I've got it.
You've got it?
I got it on my phone.
And you can sign up, and you can get different drops that come out. And they are all the prototypes.
Oh, they're the best.
And it is the coolest thing.
Well, so that type of innovation and that type of thinking, that kind of creative foresight, do you see that in the automotive industry?
I don't. Well, I do in parts of it. And we'll talk about that in future episodes with companies that are very much in the electric vehicle space, Tesla being one of them. We'll talk about it with the launch of the Ford Bronco in a future episode and how that is playing out. But I think in a corporate environment, you would get to a place where you're avoiding risk, right?
Yeah.
And so there's so many safety issues, there's so many hoops to jump through, hurdles to clear, that by the time that the car makes it to market, it doesn't look like the prototype that you saw in the artist's rendering.
Yeah. And there is a lot of risk there too. But it always just seems kind of boring. You know, like everybody wants to own something cool.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I worked for Toyota corporate for 7 years.
Okay.
In marketing. And there's a story I'd like to share with you and the listeners.
Yeah.
In the process, it's very much a matrix organization. And so you would have to get creative items approved by a dealer advertising advisory board.
Okay.
Right? 12 dealers to make sure that it had that retail orientation. That once they got through them, which was no small task, I'm minimizing how long that actually took.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're creative concepting, you're storyboarding. Now you would take it in-house, and it would have to be, if it was the Tundra, right? Because a truck plant was going into San Antonio at the time that I was working there. We would have to get it approved by the truck manager, the marketing manager, the director of marketing, right? The director of truck advertising, the VP of marketing, the VP of operations, the VP of distribution, because you wouldn't want to advertise something that you weren't able to produce, right?
Yeah.
All these things start to make sense. And finally, you would run it up the channel, get the president to sign off. You know who the last person was?
Who?
Mind you, I think I've named just about everybody in the organization. Can you imagine who the last person would be?
No, I can't.
It was legal, right? And so I had a really good relationship with the lawyer, but you can imagine after having gone through that entire monstrosity of a process, and his name's Joe Herbert, great guy, and he would always give me feedback at the end, right? Not about legal repercussions or risk, because that's what lawyers do is manage risk. He'd give me creative feedback.
So is this guy like an Einstein? He was like in the patent office, a creative. He got to see everybody's ideas. And so he's like a guru.
He was good, but I think I just had too much with one of them, right? Because anytime you'd go, like if you'd make it all the way through the loop and it to the president like, well, I want to tweak out this. Well, you're back through the loop now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So you don't want this guy to say anything.
So now I'm in do-over, and I'm like, I told him that. I said that. I said, hey, I just need your legal guidance. I don't need your, creative guidance. He goes, hey, Jim, I've known you a while, and I appreciate you, but last I checked, you don't need to pass the bar exam to give marketing opinions. I was like, Joe. No, yeah, he dropped the mic on me for sure. But, you do have to take all that feedback and try to assimilate it. And even when you got a guy that you like and he's a good legal guy, even maybe even especially they want to give guidance.
We all can be defensive when it comes to creative because you do have a lot of effort into it. You do have a lot of energy into it. You have a whole lot of things into it. But, some of the best things that I've ever been a part of are things that people made me change that I didn't want to change.
Get better.
Yeah, and it made it better, and
well, the best thing that happened for me was to get out of my own head, right? And that happened fast. When you accept it that you're marketing to 8 to 13-year-olds when you're 25, and you never ever knew that was what that company did, you have to realize what your mom thinks or what your brother. It doesn't matter. So tell me this: what's your greatest or greater satisfaction? Is it when the client approves of something, like you feel like the client totally gets it, or is it when you see it connect with the consumer? I'm sure you've won awards through the years. How do those feel? Like, are those
awards feel good?
Okay.
It's recognition, but I think to make great stuff, you have to be just extremely critical of yourself on some level.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, like, I think you have to ignore your own criticism and you have to keep pushing through stuff, but you need to be critical. So when I make something that I am proud of, when I'm done with it, I think that's the biggest success. I'm like, I like this, and I'm really hard on everything we do. I mean, I can show you work that's won an award and point out, 100 things I'd like to change.
Yeah, you didn't like the shadow.
Yeah, I don't like this,
Right.
I don't like that, I wish they didn't say this. Why do, the music should be a dB lower there or whatever it is.
Yeah, the downbeat on the car door open.
Yeah,
didn't match
it's
the
not
music bed.
perfect.
It was at 42% instead of 25.
Yeah, and like it's stuff that nobody notices, but those little things add up, and if you want to get as many of those little things right.
And that's a great way to end it, because as we're watching the NFL and college football come into play, some of these athletes who play for the fans in the stands, there's not those people watching anymore. So I think that's a great insight for creative types. You want to basically deliver at a ever increasing level of personal satisfaction, right?
For
you know
sure.
that what you're doing is the best that you can possibly do, and
If you do that, everything takes care of itself. I mean, you're going to get the recognition, you're going to get, people clients that like it, and you're going to get results.
and still somehow maintain that open feedback pathway, huh?
Oh, well, I didn't say it was easy. So.
Well, there you have it. It's not easy. Chris Wohrer, thanks for joining me on the Automotive Advertising Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, look forward to having you again soon.
Let's do it.
You've been listening to the Automotive Advertising Podcast. If you have any questions for Jim or would like to be a guest on the show, please email podcast@localsearchgroup.com.